The night has come, it's cold and losing my control.
Can you talk? There we go. All right. Whew, this is a good show. It's going to be a really great show because we had all the technical difficulties at the beginning. Welcome to the Light Gate, everybody. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.4 FM. We're on Facebook, we're on Roku, we're on Rumble, and we're on YouTube. I want to thank our sponsor real quick. We have a network sponsor, Carnation. We love you all very much. Thank you for handling our network. We appreciate everything you do for us. And I want y'all to try them out. I'm drinking my coffee with my Carnation in it tonight. Absolutely. Okay, Preston, I'm just going to say go, go, go.
All right. Thank you, Dolly. I, of course, am your host, Preston Dennett, and my lovely co-host is Dolly Saffron. Thank you for joining us on, what is it, episode 121 of The Light Gate. We truly appreciate you guys joining us every Monday evening. We're so very excited about our guest. I'm particularly excited. I've been following him since, well, the 1990s.
Yeah.
A very long time. Since I was in college, actually. Changed really how I thought about this subject. So I'll bring him on in just a second. I'm going to go through our welcoming pretty quickly because I do really want to get to our guest as soon as possible. But we love you guys so much. So I do want to say a quick hi to all the wonderful people here in chat. And I see quite a large crowd. So thank you guys. Thank you, Polly. First in line, and we have Teresa Lavine. We got a nice crowd. We've got Robin. And we have Charisse Basilla talking
Hello,
about
Charisse. Hello.
Kathleen. She gave us a shout out. Thank you, Kathleen. We love Kathleen. She was on a couple of previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We have Peak wishing everyone a happy Lightgate Monday.
Thank you.
A real nice crowd here. We have Kaleidoscope Eyes from Knoxville, Tennessee. And Tim Houston. We have, who else? Scarlet Fire. Great guest tonight. Blessings to y'all. Yes, amazing. Yes. Tim Houston. Forbidden Archeology is a classic.
Yes.
That is absolutely the God's honest truth. We will be talking about that tonight. We have Jemima Morton. Thank you, Jemima, for joining us, as well as the Owl Man.
Hey, Owl Man.
Happy Lightgate Monday.
Hello.
We have the wonderful Louise. We always love to see you here, Louise. It's amazing. You join us each and every Monday. It's very, very cool. Hope all is well. We're sending you healing energy for your dear hubby. Let's see, Bambi Dudley. Hello,
Hey.
Dreary Philly.
Oh, I know. We're worried you got that hurricane out in the Atlantic. I'm so sorry.
We had a sunny day today here. Huge shout out to Becky. Thank you, Becky. We really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Hello, namaste. Always awesome to see you here. And Heidi Hansen. Good
I love you, Heidi.
morning, early morning. She's definitely staying up late. Thank you, Heidi, for being here, for your wonderful generosity, for just being who you are, this wonderful light in the world. If you guys haven't seen Heidi Hansen's interviews, plural, on the Light Gate, do check it out. They're archived. We absolutely adore her. Heidi, I got your books just recently. I'm so excited and very proud of you for pumping out these books. just amazing. So yeah, check out Heidi's books. Namaste. We love you. That's all I can really say. We just love you so much. Your generosity is unparalleled. You are absolutely amazing. Okay, I'm going to get through this real quick now because I do very much want to get to our guest. We have Betsy Foister. We have, let's see, and Joanne. Flea Market Gold. We have Greg, all the way from Scotland.
Oh, Scotland. Yeah.
We have R. Brady. We have, in my opinion, you guys are amazing. You just make it so much fun. Window Wheelan, Stargaze, Energy Shifter. Thank you. Joanne's driving, but she will be listening. Okay.
Careful.
That's free, I hope.
It's free. That's right.
Yahira Medium, hello. We got Brilliant Design, Northwest Montana on deck.
Awesome. Hello.
Montana is so pretty. We have Guardian and Candy the Brave.
Awesome. Hello, Candy.
We have a nice crowd. Sharon.
Oh, yeah.
We got Blue Fox representing South Carolina. Jumpy Adventures.
Hi, Don.
Christopher Harmon. I've been absent. Glad to be back. Nice.
Welcome back. Thank you.
We have J.R. Amadeus Schiffer, Beating 5, Sarah Church, Medicine for the Spirit.
Love that.
Oh, Christopher, thank you. You guys.
Christopher, thank you.
This helps us so much because it does cost us to put this show out. It's quite a bit of work, so we really, really do appreciate your donations.
Thank you so much.
They very much help us. Oh, Bob Thorson. Speaking of which.
Thank you, Bob.
I saw you messaged me. I haven't gotten to my messages yet, but I'm going to get to that as soon as I can. Who else do we have? Oil Painter. Yay.
Hello.
We have, I may have skipped a couple of you guys. I'm sorry. D-Man. We have Keith Rowell. We have Jacques Dion.
Jacques Dion. Yep.
Well, I think that's, Christopher Harmon got certified as a hypnotherapist.
Oh, congratulations.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's something this field needs. We have AP from Jamaica. How about that? And Kay Hansen. And now I'm just going to bring on our guest because I have spent enough time. I got my allotted 5 minutes. Actually, I went over that a little bit. So let me just introduce our guest tonight here. Let me put up the banner, which puts his name up here. There we go. So honored, so excited, really delighted to welcome the amazing Michael Cremo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to our show tonight. We're going to be talking about his many amazing books and his incredible groundbreaking, I'm going to underline that, groundbreaking landmark research into archaeology and, what would we call it, how age of humanity. At any rate, Michael knew from a very early age that he wanted to be a writer. He was spelling out words in his alphabet soup. That's kind of what gave it away. And as he says, from the very beginning, my life has been a spiritual quest for love and truth. How cool is that? My father served as an American intelligence officer for the United States Air Force, and from that time, my life was one of periodic change and travel. I went to high school in an American school in Germany and spent my vacations traveling all over Europe. Once in the spring of 1965 in a youth hostel in Stockholm, I met some kids who had been to India and back traveling overland. And I decided I would someday do the same thing. So we became interested in Eastern philosophy and Indian esoteric teachings and studied the Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita. There.
Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita. There you go.
Bhagavad-gita.
No, Bhagavad-gita. Yeah.
It's a G. All right. Well, at any rate, by
Bhagavad-gita.
1980, he had established himself as a writer, and since then, his many books have sold more than, wait for this, 10 million copies. That's insane. And have been translated into a great number of languages. His first book, Forbidden Archeology, The Hidden History of the Human Race, was definitely a landmark book which challenged the mainstream paradigm of archaeology and showed that humankind is not tens of thousands of years old, but millions. Amazing. As Michael writes, this book shows that the archaeologists and anthropologists over the past 150 years have accumulated vast amounts of evidence showing that humans like ourselves have existed on this planet for tens of millions of years. This book shows how this evidence has been suppressed, ignored, and forgotten because it contradicts generally held ideas about human evolution. It's got quite a few other books, including My Science, My Religion, Human Devolution, The Forbidden Archeologist, and his latest Extreme Human Antiquity, and more. He is a member of the World Archeological Congress and the European Association of Archaeologists, as well as an associate member of the, okay, I'm going to do my best with this, the Bhaktivedanta, I did it, Bhaktivedanta Institute, specializing in history and the philosophy of science.
I love that.
When I say he has some influential books, he does. Forbidden Archaeology, My Science, My Religion, Human Devolution, Forbidden Archaeology's Impact, Forbidden Archaeologist, and here's the latest one, Extreme Human Antiquity. So we're going to be covering some of this stuff. I actually do have one of his books. I'm just saying, I have been a fan since college. Yeah. So let's just bring him on. Just going to bring him on right now.
Hello, Michael. Welcome
Hi, Michael.
to. Yeah.
Did I pronounce your last name right? Cremo?
That's perfect.
Okay, good. Should have asked that before.
Okay, we have issues tonight, but okay.
Here, that's probably because we've got a
Wrong
comment.
for names.
There we go.
Thank you. Okay.
So first of all, thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to be with you and all the Lightgate people.
Yeah, well, we're so excited.
I'm sure they love it too. Yeah.
As I was telling you before, we started the show, I was studying all kinds of science in college. And I was really, really interested in anthropology. I was taking it every year. And they were saying modern man was like 40,000 years old. And then they were kept upping it each year. I'm like, well, maybe they don't even know. Last year of college, I found your book. Well, it's actually the full version. This is the abridged version. I stupidly lent it out, and they kept it. But my friend kept it. But it absolutely changed the way I felt about not only archaeology and anthropology, but about science in general. It really opened up my eyes. So I am just so honored to have you here tonight.
Yes.
And I know Dolly is too. But I thought we would start, as I kind of warned you when we spoke before the show, basically how I read it in your biography, what brought you into this field? So what brought you to, study this subject and start writing books?
Well, I think some of the reasons were covered in the introduction. I think it was a big influence on me when I was growing up that my father was involved in the intelligence services. So that meant a couple of things for me as I was growing up. One, as you mentioned, was I was traveling around a lot, got exposed to a lot of different cultures, and learned there's more than one way to look at things. So that was influential. And that experience that you mentioned in Stockholm when I was about 16 years old and meeting kids who had traveled overland to Europe, from Europe to India, and then back again, that influenced me as well. And in those days, you could actually do it. It's very difficult today, for the past couple of decades to go overland from, say, Istanbul to Kathmandu. It's not so easy to do these days. But at a certain time, it was possible. And that got me interested in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India. And when I look at the historical writings, the Puranas, they told of human populations, human civilizations existing on Earth millions of years ago. So I kind of thought, well, is that just some mythology that was invented by whoever wrote these texts a few hundred or thousand years ago? Or was there perhaps some factual basis to support it? Of course, when I looked in the current textbooks, I didn't see any such evidence. I saw only the evidence that supported the dominant consensus in the world of science that human beings like us first appeared relatively few thousand years ago.
Right.
When, yes,
Right from the time of Noah, 6,800 and something. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah,
Very religious driven, our scientific community, you know? I think they were living within the confines of what that religion was dictating. And
yeah,
it had a lot of power over them as well, you know?
yeah. So that is an interesting point. That, of course, you know, you had Christian creationist scientists who I don't really have a problem with, you know, in terms of their supporting the view that they do. But modern science kind of thinks it's very different from that. But I have a little bit of a different perspective on that, because if you look at the basic time concept of modern science and say the more conservative types of Christian ideas, they're actually pretty much the same in terms of their time. Time is linear and directional in both cases. In terms of the biblical account, for example, you have a creation event, and then God creates the different species, and finally he makes Adam and Eve, and then they're in a fallen state, and they have to be delivered by a Messiah. And after some time, there's a final judgment, and then the whole thing is over. So modern scientists like to think that they're very different from that. But because modern science arose in a Judeo-Christian culture in Europe, basically, it retained a lot of the same concepts, like the time concept. Today, scientists have an account that very much resembles the biblical account in this sense. There's a creation event, the Big Bang. Species evolve until you get the humans coming in rather late. The humans are in a poverty-stricken, ignorant condition, and they need to be saved by science and technology. And then finally, everyone will be uploaded into, there'll be some final judgment, and those that are qualified will be uploaded into computers or whatever, some digital space, where they'll live happily ever after. And then there'll be the big crunch. Everything will be finished. So there's a different concept of time that's cyclical, with human civilizations coming into existence and disappearing, reappearing, disappearing, a cyclical concept of time. And that's what I've been exposed to. So although superficially there may appear to be differences between what modern science says and what the earlier biblical Christian account says, there in many senses, quite the same in adopting this linear, progressive time concept and fitting everything into that. Although they may differ in the number of years that it takes for the whole process to unfold, but the cyclical account, I think, makes more sense to me ultimately. But to get back to the question of the antiquity of the human species, modern science puts it today at about 300,000 years. And if you look at an archaeology textbook, it will give only the evidence that
Yeah,
supports that idea.
that's right.
But,
Therein lies the problem. Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
yeah, now this again led me to do something, to look beyond the textbooks. And this may have something to do with growing up among people involved in the intelligence services, because I learned, just by listening and seeing what was going on, that there is something called confidential knowledge. There is secret knowledge. There are things that certain people know that the general public doesn't
Right.
know. Uh, so there are secrets. There are areas of knowledge that are kind of blocked off from public access. So that is a fact. So I thought maybe there's more to this than what's being presented in the textbooks today. So that got me looking into the history of archaeology, looking not at the textbooks, but at the original scientific reports published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature and books. And when
Can I ask a quick question? Would you say that also partly what influenced you is, as your father being an intelligence officer, they actually go directly to the source as opposed to accepting, the conventional wisdom. So they ask questions, they analyze, they have a critical thinking aspect that perhaps the average person doesn't have. So I think that probably helped contribute to your being, maybe ask some questions about what's going on here.
Yeah. Actually, when I was in university, I was preparing for a career in one of the intelligence services.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
I became a little bit disillusioned, but didn't wind up doing that. But in another sense, I did carry out something like that in the work that I'm doing now. But
100%, yeah.
so that got me looking into the original reports. And, I didn't know what I was going to find when I started out. I thought, well, maybe there'll be a few interesting cases. I'll write a short pamphlet or article about it and go on to some other topic. But when I started looking into it, I found that I would find a report that a scientist had discovered some human bones or human artifacts or human footprints going back much further in time than the current dominant consensus would allow. And then there'd be a little footnote, in that publication saying, and Dr. So-and-so in France, he's discovered something similar to that. Then I'd go and look up that, and it would lead to something else. And then, the research that I thought originally might take 8 weeks turned into 8 months and then to 8 years, because there was just so much of this evidence.
Right. It's global, right? You're explaining that it's global evidence. In other words, it's not pockets in one place in particular or somewhere, isolated from everybody. It's global evidence is showing up, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, from all parts of the world, from all periods of time. So it was really interesting. It was a kind of a revelation to me
Yeah.
because, say, if I hadn't looked at some alternative account, like the account that I found in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India, which aren't the only source of such knowledge. A lot of the great wisdom traditions of the world, be they Native American, Australian Aboriginal, Chinese, Egyptian, whatever, they all tend to say that humans have been around for a lot longer than most scientists would allow today. So uh, it was kind of a revelation to me that so much of this evidence existed. So that raised a question. If this evidence is there in the primary scientific literature, the original scientific reports, and I'm talking about not just reports in English. I have a reading knowledge of most of the European languages. You know, I
Wow.
lived in Germany, studied German. I studied Russian in
Oh
college.
my goodness. That's
So,
awesome. Yeah.
so I wouldn't say I'm a fluent speaker of these things, but I can read archaeological reports in those languages. So I was looking at reports not just in English, by American or English scientists, but scientists from all over the world writing in many different languages: Spanish, Italian, French, and so on. So German, uh, all those languages. So I was able to get a very broad picture of it. And I had to ask myself, well, if this evidence really is there, as these primary scientific reports are indicating, then why aren't they found in the present day secondary literature, which is supposedly based on a complete survey of the primary scientific literature? In other words, the writers of textbooks, they're, they've reviewed all the reports and they're just presenting it for students.
Right.
And, in the textbooks, the secondary literature. So what I found is that it's due to a process of what I call knowledge filtration, where if you have reports that go along with the dominant consensus, they
Hmm.
pass through that filter.
Right. And
Whereas,
unfortunately, they feed information back in on themselves that only pertains to that. It's almost like they can give an account, justify it with evidence that proves it, and they stay in that circle of what that is. They don't go out of it. They don't see past it at
Yeah,
all.
that's what I found so striking about your work is that it is counter to the mainstream paradigm, but you proved it. I mean, you absolutely laid it out in black and white
Right.
that the mainstream paradigm is wrong, flat out wrong.
yeah. Of course, I'm not the only person who's noticed this phenomenon. It's something that's been understood by historians of science and philosophers of science for a long time. You mentioned the word paradigm. Well, that's a term that was introduced into these discussions by Thomas Kuhn. It's a famous historian of science who wrote a book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. So he was the one that popularized the term paradigm and paradigm shift. So, what is a paradigm actually? It's a uh, consensus among a group of scientists in a particular discipline about the kinds of questions that should be asked in their discipline, the ways in which it should be researched, the conclusions that have been arrived at. It sort of amounts to a whole perspective on the topic. And Kuhn pointed out that in the absence of a paradigm, if in a scientific discipline that everybody is just experimenting with different theories, then there's no consensus that can be used as a standard for judging evidence. It's like all evidence is equally relevant. But once you have a paradigm, like the paradigm of human evolution that has become dominant in the world of science today, then you've got some kind of marker. You can say and the way it works is the evidence that conforms to the paradigm passes through. You know,
I would like to add a comment to that. And this is my experience. Lived it, seen it, working in real time. Most organizations that are scientific are funded. And whoever's funding that has some control over their methodology, because they can withhold funding during gathering of evidence and say, we want you to propagate this evidence instead of that evidence, work it out. Otherwise, we pull your funding from you. And it's insipid. They have been doing it for centuries. It's those who have the money and the control over and the knowledge of all humanity have had control over that. And it's very hard for scientists today because they're breaking apart into groups and factions because of it. And we now have rogue scientists who are not funded by anybody who are calling a spade a spade. They're calling them out for it. Okay. And when Preston told me about you and your books and everything, I realized that you must not be funded. You're probably working on your own. This is how you were able to stay away from being told what you could or could not, write or speak into the scientific record. See what I'm saying? And it is a problem because there are whole groups of people who control the world literally will not allow you to know certain things because it's going to go against what they want you to be doing.
Yeah, and it's in all fields of science too: astronomy, physics.
All of it.
I do a lot of UFO research, and same thing happens in studying the UFO topic. And you bring up cryptozoology in your book, so that it comes into it as well. So I'm interested in. I know you worked with Richard L. Thompson to put all this together. What a horrendous task this must have been. So I really liked how you organized it in your book.
Well, it's interesting, Preston, what you said about UFO research and knowledge filtration going on in different disciplines, because I was really surprised when Forbidden Archaeology was first published that I started getting invitations from UFO conferences to speak. And I was thinking, well, what's the connection? But what I found out very quickly was the connection was the knowledge filtration, because the UFO and abductee types of researchers definitely encountered that. They've got very good evidence, reported by military pilots, airline pilots, law enforcement officials, people with good observation abilities and reputations for honesty, reporting all these things, recording them, yet it doesn't make any impact in the scientific circles. So it became apparent to me that was the commonality that inspired them to invite me to come and talk about archaeology at UFO conferences.
Absolutely.
And then about the other point about other scientific disciplines than archaeology having the same phenomenon. I learned that when I gave a lecture about forbidden archaeology at a university in South Africa. And it turned out that when I gave my talk, the students were actually on vacation. So
Oh,
my audience was all the professors
yeah.
in the
Wow.
science departments of the university. So I gave my talk, and then afterwards, I kind of was standing around, and one of the professors kind of walks up to me, kind of looks around, makes sure nobody's within hearing distance, says, Mr. Cremo, this phenomenon of knowledge filtration is happening in my discipline, astronomy. And, he goes on and tells me about it and goes away. Then another one comes up to me, kind of looks around, makes sure nobody's listening. Yeah, Mr. Cremo, this phenomenon you talk about is happening in my discipline, chemistry. And kind of one after another, a representative of practically every department kind of told me the same thing. It's
That's
really
amazing.
interesting.
How interesting that is that they're all kind of looking around skittish and worried about their reputations.
That's because they lose their jobs. Their funding will disappear.
I know, but this is a pursuit of knowledge. There
It
shouldn't
doesn't
be.
matter. Somebody's running the planet, and we all have to agree that
Hmm.
if we can't agree, there's a kink in the wheel somewhere, and we all need to pay attention to it. We need to seek out that knowledge or that information and figure it out. Because with this science, the archaeology, geology, everything, space technology, physics, all of that is interconnected. Okay, you in this galaxy, in this solar system, you can't have one without the other, because one helps to show you what that timeline is, because there will be consecutive running with that timeline inferences. Like with the forbidden archaeology, you've proven that it's millions of years moving past that. But in geology, we know that there are different periods of time where the Earth was doing really weird things. We had ice ages, we had continental drift, we had things falling apart, we had the sun burping and doing weird things, we had boulders coming in and changing life on this planet, and they all follow through with that. The only thing is that the scientific community knew this, and they started moving us away from absolute facts and data and provable, that everybody gets to talk about open doors, open books, open, transparent accumulation of knowledge working together to compartmentalized, funded,
Well, that brings me to another question for you, Michael. Did you ever get any pushback from, any threats or any no, you shouldn't be talking about this from the mainstream scientific community?
Well, yes. It can happen in various ways.
yeah.
But the scientific community is actually not just a single unit. There are different groups of scientists that I see. And then in terms of reactions to my work, I see three groups. One I call the fundamentalist materialists. And they're very much opposed to my work because it contradicts the Darwinian theory of evolution.
Correct.
And which they support for more or less ideological reasons, not for purely scientific reasons. And one thing that they're concerned about is, where does this all lead? What it leads to, in my opinion, is the fact that we need new explanations for human origins, new theories. And I think these are going to involve consciousness. Now, most scientists today think that consciousness is produced by matter. It's produced by neurons in the brain. So they have that idea. And when the chemicals in the brain become disorganized at the time of death, they would say there's no more consciousness. But I think consciousness has its own independent existence apart from matter, apart from the physical body,
Yep.
apart from whatever's going on in the brain. So I think it has its own independent existence.
Right.
And
It's not a theory. They've actually proven it. They're just not telling you that. Because we know for a fact, this is data, this is absolute factual. It's in the scientific record. I'm sorry. But a proton, which is, every cell everywhere, it has a proton in it. It's electrical. It has its own electrical current. It produces light. You might not be able to see it with the eyes that you have, but it's there. They've not only factored it, they've photographed it, they have it on film, they've seen how long it lasts, and they know that we are beings. We all are protons that we're exactly made up of in this third dimensional space that is gravity heavy. Now we're getting into physics here, okay? It's all protons compacted together, and you are a being of light. Your matter is protons energetically compacted together, evolved together to produce a body, a vehicle that your consciousness is using. They know that your heart starts the process because in the cellular creation of life during conception, it's an electrical current that starts the whole process. It's electricity, it's light, it's protonic electricity, and it runs throughout the universe. Every single human being transmits a frequency. They know that as well. Your brain may have all kinds of weird things going on, but the two things that they know that it has is it has frequency, it transmits itself, and we are all capable of transmitting it to one another. We can hear each other psychically, and they've proven that now too. They have a rudimentary.
It's funny because I actually believed I was part of that crowd of the materialists before I became involved in this subject.
Right.
So you mentioned there was 3 groups.
Yeah.
The first was
Yeah.
the fundamentalist
Materialists. Who else is left?
who just, for basically ideological reasons, support the materialistic theories. The second group, well, that group, this first group, they don't want to hear what I have to say. They don't want anyone else to hear it. If I go to a university, sometimes, they try to get my talk banned. And this happens in different countries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was in Russia once, back, a few years when there weren't the same tensions that there are between our countries these days. There was a more hopeful vision of what Russia would turn out to be. So one of my books was published in Russia, and I went to do a lecture tour there, which included lectures at universities. So at one university, some professors had invited me to speak, and then some other professors, faculty members at the university, found out, and they went to the director of the university and tried to get the lecture canceled, and they did get it canceled. So the professors who invited me went to the local branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences and talked to the director there. And he said, well, if they won't let him speak at the university, he can speak here. So they had buses bring students and professors
That's
from
perfect.
the university. And
Yeah.
the professors who invited me said more people came than would have come if it had been held at the university. So yeah, you do kind of get experiences like that. It's happened in this country, the United States, as well. So occasionally things like that do happen. So that's one group of scientists and their attitude. And there's another group who are supporters of the current dominant theories, but more or less for scientific reasons. In other words, they're willing to listen to alternatives if they're presented, according to their standards of knowledge. And it's scientists in that group who have invited me to speak at their universities, who have accepted proposals that I've made to present papers at major international scientific conferences. It is scientists in that group who have reviewed my books in their professional literature and have acknowledged positive aspects of it. For example, there was a noted historian of science, David Oldroyd, who wrote a 23-page review article of Forbidden Archaeology in the journal Social Studies of Science. Usually when a book is reviewed, it gets a paragraph.
Yeah.
But this was such a shock to him that he had to write 23 pages about it.
Wow.
And he asked a question. He said, has this book, Forbidden Archaeology, made a contribution to the discourse in the field of paleoanthropology? So, Preston, you would know paleoanthropology is the discipline in anthropology that deals with human origins. And this historian of science who specialized in the sciences dealing with human origins said, yes, this book does make a contribution for two reasons. First of all, he said, as a professional historian of science, he could see no other book that had gone into the history of archaeology in such detail before. And second, he said, the book raises important questions about the certainty of scientific truth claims. In other words, scientists attach different levels of certainty to their different theories. Some are highly certain, some not very certain. They attach, according to this historian of science, a very high level of certainty to their theories of human origins. But he said, in light of the evidence presented in this book, they should take it down a notch or two, that it's maybe not quite as certain as they were thinking. So you would have the more open-minded scientists who would maybe still be supporters of the current dominant theories, willing to acknowledge important aspects of the work that we did in Forbidden Archaeology. And at least they're willing to listen. And I think that's important because if ideas are going to change, the very first thing that's necessary is that people in these disciplines be willing to listen to a new idea or a different idea.
Yep.
It needs to be brought up. It needs to be debated. You know what I'm saying? It needs to go into a forum and literally brought out so that everybody gets a chance to come and listen to this wherever it's at, and everybody has a chance to debate whether this is
That's what science is.
Well, yeah, it's almost like I thought you were going to tell me you got your doctorate over it, that a university was willing to give you your doctorate because you're describing something that should have given you a doctorate, A
Nobel Prize, let's face it.
Yeah.
You changed the face of archaeology. You really did.
Well, it would be nice to live in a time when such things were possible.
Right.
But sometimes, I mean, it would be nice, like you're suggesting, if the leading circles in the society in which you live would have views that could accommodate your personal convictions that you've arrived at. But sometimes we don't have that luxury, and you've got to go on in spite of that and without such recognition or acknowledgement. And that is sometimes necessary, at least for a person who has some type of integrity in the sense that you can stand for your convictions and represent them at a time when it's the circumstances for its being accepted are not very favorable.
It's amazing to me that there are so many theories out there, and notwithstanding as many proven aspects to every theory that there is. There are some theories that have been tried to be proven, and they've been disproved over and over and over again. Big Bang, and they keep propagating it. And now they've got telescopes out in space, and they're starting to see that, there really was no Big Bang, and everybody's having to do a reclamation and a backtrack, and they don't know how they're going to do it right now. It's a huge controversy in the scientific community because they're going to have to admit they have scientific proof now there was no Big Bang, and that there are other universes beside this one. And oh my, and that's just the start of the theory of everything. There is no it. I would like to see more consensus, among scientists. When you bring evidence of something and you give everybody a chance to look at your evidence and disprove you or prove you, that's how something gets put into the scientific record. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't see any new information going in like it should. None. It's still propagating old theories. They're still clinging onto it desperately, and they need to stop doing that. They need to be open-minded and take the chance to get off of what they're working on and go on what you're doing and prove or disprove it, because you've given them the evidence. It's something to work on, literally something to work on.
Speaking of that, let's go over some of the evidence, because you really broke it down with, the incised and broken bones and the neoliths and the eoliths and that anomalous human skeletal remains, objects out of time and place. So tell us a little bit about some of the evidence that you found particularly impressive that shows that humanity is far older than we think.
Yeah. Well, I was looking for two things basically when I was doing the research for those books, and that was that there's evidence that there actually is physical evidence in the form of human footprints, human artifacts, which are of different types, as you named, or human skeletal remains, that they are well reported and well documented. And I was also looking for, excuse me, I have to take a sip of water here.
No worries. I think I will too.
And the second thing I was looking for is documenting the knowledge filtration process. What happened to that evidence?
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at human footprints, for example. In 1979, Mary Leakey, who was a very prominent archaeologist, discovered footprints in a place called Laetoli in the country of Tanzania in East Africa. And these footprints were made in volcanic ash that had fallen a long time ago. And in her original report, her original scientific report, she said the footprints are just like anatomically modern human footprints. And the problem was they were 3,700,000 years old. That was determined by potassium argon dating of
There you go. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
That is a problem.
Yeah. So, so how did she deal with the problem? One area of knowledge filtration is somehow or other you make it fit the current paradigm. Another thing would be just to completely dismiss it. But her chosen solution was to say 3.7 million years ago, there must have been some kind of hominin that had feet exactly like modern human feet. In other words, kind of an ape-like body, but feet exactly like those of modern humans. And the type of hominin that existed, 3 million years ago, between 3 and 4 million years ago in Africa, would have been some variety of Australopithecus,
Right.
of which the most famous example is Lucy, whose name you hear from time to time in these discussions. But scientists have actually discovered the foot bones of Australopithecus, and their foot structure is not like that of a modern human being. For one thing, the first toe or moves out to the side like the human thumb.
Right.
And the toes are quite long, kind of like human fingers.
Dexterous, yeah.
So a foot like that doesn't make a print exactly like a modern human footprint. And at Laetoli, you've got not just one or two footprints, you've got dozens of footprints of three individuals that were walking through that volcanic ash. So I went to a scientific conference, a meeting of the World Archaeological Congress in South Africa some years ago. And the discoverer of the foot bones of a specimen of Australopithecus was there. And he made a presentation about the footprints that he had found, the foot bones that he had found, which showed this ape-like structure of the foot. So he had claimed in his report that it was a foot like the one he found, represented by the bones of the foot that had made the footprints at Laetoli, another part of Africa. So during the question session, I asked him, well, if the foot bones that you found had this ape-like structure, how could they have made those footprints in Laetoli, which many scientists have said are exactly like modern human footprints? Like Tim White, a paleontologist, prominent one, said they're human. They're just like the footprints that you or I would make if we were walking on a beach today.
Right.
So this scientist in South Africa who had discovered some footbones of Australopithecus at the Sterkfontein caves in South Africa said, well, the creature was walking with his big toe closed up against the other ones like this, and he was walking with his long toes curved under like this, and that's how the footprints got made and why they looked like they were human. And I just thought, what is that? We're not talking about just one footprint here. We're talking about dozens of footprints.
Right.
You would think that in at least one of them, the three creatures that were making these dozens of footprints would have had their feet in their natural configuration.
Right.
Yeah,
I
that just
didn't
shows
see
the
any.
mental gymnastics
Well,
people will go through to
yeah,
squeeze
well,
it into the paradigm.
I'm a nurse, okay? And anatomy is one of my big favorite things. And there's no way I've seen those footprints, and you can see an arch. You can see how they're walking on the outside of their foot, the heel, and the toes. In other words, that's how the print got made into the ash. And there's no way a knuckle walker could have made that. It would have been a big hole, and it would have been a lumpy big hole, all right? With something still protruding on the side over here from that extra long thumb. Okay. And all you have to do is take the foot of those bones, flesh it up, make a model of it, put flesh on it, and do that to it and put it in ash and see what you get. And that's exactly what it would have been. It would have been a big hole, depression, with a couple of little spears on it and that knuckle sticking out, and the heel not going in because the front of the foot would have taken the weight. And that would have also meant that they were knee walking. In other words, walking against the power of their knee because their legs were bowed. And there's no way they could have made that. I would have attacked him. That's crazy.
Yeah. And there's lots of examples of this, correct? It's not just that one.
Right.
Oh yeah, there are other examples of very ancient human footprints. Some of them alongside the footprints of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yes. That's really intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't include that case in the hidden history of the human race or forbidden archaeology, because the original scientists who had reported them, these footprints of dinosaur and human footprints are found near Glen Rose, Texas, on the banks of the Paluxy River there. And the original scientists who reported them from a Christian creationist angle, Henry Morris Jr., he withdrew his claims. He said the footprints that I originally thought were human footprints are, in fact, just dinosaur footprints that have been eroded. So they look like human footprints, but they're really not. So
we got a debunk going on. Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm sarcastic. I'm so sorry. That's debunking an original, his theory, because somebody went after him about it. That's why.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I kind of put that in a holding file. And what happens to me sometimes is students of archaeology who read my books write to me. So a graduate student of archaeology from a university in Texas wrote to me and said, I read your book. It's really fantastic. Is there anything I can do to help? And I wrote back to her and I said, well, yeah, you could go to this Paluxy River site near Glen Rose, Texas.
Ooh.
Have a look and tell me what you think is going on there. So she went, and she actually participated in some new excavations they were doing where they were stripping off layers of limestone rock and exposing new footprints. So
yeah,
she was there on the site, personally observing what was going on, participating in the excavation. And she sent reports back to me saying they're really convincing. In her opinion, they really were human footprints side by side with dinosaur footprints. And kind of on that basis, I included that case in my latest book, Extreme Human Antiquity. So sometimes that happens. Other students have written me and said, one of them said, I was on an excavation with my professor of archaeology, and I just happened to mention to my professor that maybe humans have been around for longer than we think possible. And the student wrote to me, And then my professor said, I've got a book you should read. And the professor gave the student his personal copy of Forbidden Archaeology. So that was just the sort of thing that I was thinking would go on when I was doing the research and writing for the book. I was thinking like that. This is something that's going to circulate underground. In other words, the professor, you know, unless the student had expressed some interest and maybe things are different than we think,
Yeah.
wouldn't have mentioned anything. But when he saw that the student was a little open-minded and was questioning, passed the book on to him. So,
Have you ever been invited to teach your book? In other words, present it in a college forum? I know that there's a lot of ufology people out there who are actually teaching ufology in colleges. Whole courses of it. And if that's possible, why couldn't you be teaching what you've
Yeah, that's a
discovered?
good question. Should
well,
be.
that is, in one sense, it could be something on my part that I see myself not really in that position. That's for someone else to take up. I'm kind of like, I have lectured at universities.
Okay.
I, but at this stage, I haven't seen that there's a university that would give me a whole course.
See, what needs to happen is an undergrad student becoming your understudy, working alongside of you.
It's got to happen because this is the truth, and the truth survives. It's inviolable.
Right.
Sooner or later, it's going to come out.
I do have people like that.
Okay.
But here's the problem. Like, and you were mentioning this a little earlier, Dolly, that if you're part of the system, pressure can be put on you.
Right.
So I think it is possible for someone to work within the system, but they may, because I'm not exposed to those pressures, I can say anything I want. I can say the most extreme thing, whereas because I'm outside the system, a person working within it, within those institutions, may be able to push things incrementally in the right direction. But I don't think they could do the kinds of presentations that I make that radically contradict, the current dominant paradigm. So that's something that has to be considered. Like I said, I do have archaeology students that I mentor.
That's fantastic.
One of the more interesting things, you have so much evidence, but one of the most interesting to me are the artifacts. And you have, for example, letters in a marble block in Philadelphia, a gold thread in Carboniferous stone in England, just a grooved sphere from South Africa. All these were so interesting to me. And I'm wondering which one to you is the one that just really caught your interest, these sort of out of place artifacts.
Well, I would say the one that's caught the most interest of people who have read the book or seen documentaries about it is the grooved spheres from South Africa.
Okay.
Because
the battery, no offense, but the battery is impressive. Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah. So that's one of the more extreme anomalies. A lot of the cases that you mentioned in Forbidden Archaeology were included in an appendix to the book because they weren't as well documented as the cases that are reported in the scientific literature. So in the book Forbidden Archaeology, we included in the main text only things that have been reported in peer-reviewed scientific literature and that are very well documented. But just for the sake of completeness, because we wanted to give readers an idea of the full range and extent of this evidence, we made an appendix that included some of the more extreme anomalies, like the ones that you mentioned, which are reported mostly in newspaper articles and things like that, not necessarily in the scientific literature itself. And I think that that is to be expected. If this evidence for extreme human antiquity is really present in the layers of the earth, then we should see a pattern something like this. Some professional scientists will discover it and actually accept it, but it won't be accepted by the general scientific community. There will be scientists who will encounter it and somehow make it fit within the dominant theory. Show maybe that, well, I don't think the stratum is as old as the scientists who originally discovered it thought, or like in the case of the Laetoli footprints, offer an interpretation that somehow makes it fit. And, you find those things. And then you should also expect that not only scientists, but ordinary people should be encountering this evidence. And there you've got cases like, say, a worker in a power plant in Oklahoma in 1912, finding an iron pot and a piece of coal 300 million years old. It's like, so you have cases like that as well.
Exactly.
What do you think of the reports of giants on Earth, the giant skeletons that have been found, certainly across the United States and the world?
Well, those are very interesting. I kind of did not include that topic in Forbidden Archaeology.
Yeah, I noticed.
And the reason for that was that in these other cases, in terms of the artifacts, human skeletal remains, and footprints, I've actually been able to go to museums where these things may not be on display, but I know they're there and I get permission to see them and document them, that they really exist. That I haven't been able to do with the evidence that's been reported for giant human skeletal remains. Now, I accept personally that giant-sized humans existed in the past. And when I say giant, I mean maybe 10 feet or higher, because there are a lot of people living today who are 7 feet, between 7 and 8 feet tall. Some of them play in the NBA. And
nephew who's more than 8 feet. No kidding. The tall in our family. Yeah.
So. And there are 1 or 2 people that are 8 feet. And I think there's one person on Earth in Mongolia who's been documented as being 9 feet, but we don't see anybody 10 feet tall or taller. So these reports normally turn up in non-scientific publications like newspaper reports and things like that. Now, to me, that doesn't mean they don't exist, but I have to consider the audience that I'm dealing with and their standards of evidence. The best report that I found for such evidence is a scientific report that appeared early in the 20th century about bones that a French archaeologist discovered at a place called Castelnau in France. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's spelled Castelnau. Castelnau, I pronounce it. But there, they discovered human bones, including a thigh bone and a humerus, I believe it was, an arm bone, upper arm bone. And if you have a femur of a certain length, anthropologists can tell you how tall the person was that had a femur of that particular size. And they came up with about 11 feet. And there were photographs of the bones, and it was in a scientific journal. So I think if those could be tracked down in France, that would be a really good case.
DNA in there, they'd be able to get DNA from a femur.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'd like to pop up a few questions from chat, if that's okay, before it gets too late, because we're closing in on our last half hour. And I don't know if you can answer this or not. I haven't heard of the expanding Earth theory, but VK is asking, what does Michael think of the expanding Earth theory? Does it have rhythmic periods of expansion causing floods? When Earth was half size, all the continents fit perfectly. I've not heard of that.
Well, I have heard of that theory. I haven't, I have my area where I do research and I know the topic very thoroughly, and that's archaeological evidence for extreme human antiquity. I'm also interested in other topics, but more or less as, just as anybody else might be interested in it. So I've heard of that topic. I've contemplated it, but it's not my direct field of expertise. So I sometimes I just have to say, that I'm not really, other than, just having an interest in it and having heard about it, I don't really have any particular expertise and kind of critique of that. Or
planets don't grow and don't expand. They evaporate off. Everything on the planet eventually leaves the planet. They lose matter. They don't start with a little and grow it out. You can't take something from nothing. The Earth is as big as it is. The oceans were as big as they are, and they have proven that the continents did split apart and they're drifting. And they actually have a split occurring in real time right now. They're watching it happen. The mantle's breaking loose from the ring of fire. Everything is, active, and they're watching two continents that are going to split and start to drift a little bit. So it's proving the theory, outright proving it. So that is it's misinformation and disinformation that she's talking about. It is scientifically incorrect. Okay.
Well, all right. Well, here's another question. I've got a few, not a whole lot.
Okay.
But Carl Mids is asking, what does Michael think about Zachary Sitchin? Who's of course very famous about world.
Okay.
Emanuel Velikovsky and Zechariah Sitchin.
Yes, I'll say that. My usual practice is not to comment on the work of other alternative historians and
Yeah.
people who deal with archaeology and human origins, because I figure people can read my books, they can read Zechariah Sitchin's books, they can read anybody else's books and make up their own minds about it. But if I'm directly asked, I feel I have to answer the question. So since I'm directly asked, I would say there are aspects of Zechariah Sitchin's work that I agree with and others that I don't. Basically, his ideas concerning human origins is that, if I understand it correctly, is that he believes the process of human evolution kind of went on pretty much as modern scientists say it did until a point about 300,000 or 400,000 years ago. At that point, he, if I understand his works correctly, is that there was some intervention on Earth from some extraterrestrial beings that go by the name Anunnaki. And at that time, there was some genetic manipulation of the hominin called Homo erectus, who was existing at that time.
Yeah.
There weren't any anatomically modern humans. And as a result of that intervention, the anatomically modern human species was created as a resource to be used, kind of like slave labor or something like that, in mining gold and other things on Earth. Now, basically, I accept the idea that there are extraterrestrial beings. I think extraterrestrial beings do have something to do with the presence of anatomically modern humans on this planet. And, I may have slightly different understandings of how that occurred, but the basic principle of extraterrestrial beings having something to do with our presence here is something that I accept. But I would say that intervention or involvement of extraterrestrials took place in very, very early times, not 300,000 or 400,000 years ago. So, uh, that's kind of my reaction if people directly ask me. But normally, I just figure people can read my works. They can read Zechariah.
I think that's why when people
Yeah.
ask me about other UFO researchers, and I kind of have the same answer. But Dolly, I can see you're chomping at the bit here to say something.
It's actually poppycock. There is evidence, and you brought it forward actually, that there have been civilizations that have risen, technological civilizations over long periods of time that have risen and fallen. Okay, and it's over millions of years. Okay, we know that geologically we have periods of the geological record shows that the planet does some really strange, weird things that would cause civilizations to rise and to fall. And if you add ET into it, there could have been rescues between those civilizations. I was taught by ET that we are their children, they're our progenitors, and that we've been rescued and replanted here multiple times. Okay. And
Which would
that's how
exactly fit into what you're saying,
Sure.
Michael, with there
Yeah.
being a cyclical,
That's right.
sort of
Right.
well, I'll just pop up this next question because it speaks to that in very sort of simplistic terms, because this is what exactly we're talking about, Carl Mids. Does Michael think we've had past civilizations? Well, yeah. So my question, to expand on what Carl Mids is saying here, is So how many times do you think we've had advanced civilizations, and how advanced were they? I mean, based on what evidence you've been able to uncover.
Yeah.
Well, here's the situation as I see it, relying on my Vedic sources and what modern geology and paleontology have to say. Cyclical time is the key, in my opinion. And the basic unit of Vedic cyclical time is called the Kalpa, or the day of Brahma. It lasts for 4,320,000,000 years, and it's followed by a night of Brahma that lasts for the same period of time. Then there's another day, another night. So during the days of Brahma, life, including human life, is manifest in the universe. And during the nights, it's dormant, like in a sleeping state. Then when the next day comes, everything starts again. And so these cycles go on endlessly. But the Kalpa, or the day of Brahma, is divided into 14 sub-periods called manvantars. And between each of those sub-periods, which are a couple, maybe about 300 million years for each one, between each one, there is a devastation. So,
Right.
according to the Vedic cosmological calendar, we're now in the seventh Manvantar, which means there have been six before us. That means six devastations. And according to modern paleontology, life began about 2 billion years ago. That's what the Vedic cosmology would say. We're halfway through the day of Brahma, which lasts 4.3 billion years. We're in the seventh Manvantar. That means life would have begun about 2 to 3 billion years ago, and there have been six devastations.
Right.
So modern science says that multicellular life began about roughly 2 to 3 billion years ago.
Mm.
And since then, there are six major extinction events that have wiped out life on Earth. So to me, it's interesting to see the parallels there. They're rough, they're not exactly lined up, but it seems like it would be an incredible coincidence that those similarities should be there. Now, according to what I believe, is that at higher levels of the cosmos, the resources are there to restore or reboot life on this planet after those devastations that take place periodically. Just like it's like having your files up in the cloud, so that if your device on your device, whether it's your mobile phone or tablet or computer, breaks down, is destroyed, everything, all the resources to reboot your system and get back all your files and songs and photos and videos.
Yeah, right up until the minute it wears out. Yeah. One of the things that I learned from ET, everybody's map is just a little bit off. And we weren't on this planet the whole time. We were somewhere else before we were here. I was taught that 265 billion years ago was when we hit Earth. And before Earth, we were on Mars. And we were on Mars approximate about the same amount of time before we came here. And since we've been here, every 12,000 years, we have an event because of the physics of this solar system and how this planet survived the cataclysm that knocked Mars into it being a dead planet. We're coming up on another one. We're at the very precipice of a change.
Another extinction event.
Yeah. And the reason that that people have left information about this, like the Vedas and other people who are trying to bring the stories forward. I mean, even Plato talked about Atlantis. He was told by somebody who was aware of that Atlantis, was there, and gave him a little bit of information, but he literally died before he could elaborate on it. Clues were left behind. And then we have clues all over this planet. They built the pyramids a long time ago, not when they said they did. No Egyptian pharaoh ever had anything to do with them. They know that. They won't admit it. There was water in places that now has no water. And now the Earth's getting ready to roll over and do the next water event. Every 6,000 years that happens. It's crazy what's happening. And we are. And yes, the planet is like a computer. You're exactly right. Nature knows what to do. In the third dimension, all matter behaves a certain way. Okay. And it's like a computer. It's going to do its job to reclimate, rebuild itself, and allow itself to heal before humans can come back here to live on it again.
So, Dolly, how many iterations have there been on Earth according to what the ETs have told you? 6 or more?
Well, sometimes it's a 6,000 year cycle, sometimes it's a 12,000, and it skips every other one so that they both happen at the same time. So there have actually been 18 in 268 billion years. There have been 18 that I know of. Okay, and we've been rescued every single time by ET. This time is another matter entirely, and everybody's scratching their head because somebody on this planet doesn't want you to know what's really happening and going on. That's the problem.
Well, here's another question for you, Michael. This one's from me. Regarding like the Veda scriptures and like the Vimanyas of ancient Egypt, or I mean India rather. How advanced do you think some of these cultures were? How technologically progressed?
If advanced technologies are standard for higher or lower civilizations, that's another question. But the descriptions of them show that they had spacecraft called Vimanas, and they had cities, very elaborate, beautiful cities that were very comfortable to live in, not like our modern cities. They had, in addition to city planning, they had, for defense purposes, weapons resembling modern nuclear weapons and their descriptions. In other words, they had a very high standard. And at the same time, they were organized in such a way that people could live very naturally on this planet without destroying the environment. So they had a different level or standard of culture. We're kind of into dominating, controlling, exploiting the resources of matter in an unsustainable way. And, there's a lot of conflict on all levels of human society. So I think the symptom of an advanced civilization is not just their advanced technology, but their ability to get along with each other, to live in harmony with nature on this planet, and make progress in elevating their consciousness to qualify themselves to exist on a higher plane of reality.
Right.
Well, okay, I want to pop up another question because Michael has been very patient waiting for this. I'm doing them in order, guys. And I don't know if you can answer this one or if you have an opinion on this, Michael, but this is also from Michael Kennedy. And he's asking, Michael, can you comment on the Peruvian mummies? and to the validity of their authenticity. With a great insight into science, I'm interested in your thoughts. Thanks, great show. Are you aware of the Peruvian mummies?
I'm aware of some Peruvian mummies.
The
Some of
tridactyl.
them are very small
Yeah.
and have, like you were saying, three digits. I'm aware of them, but I haven't really deeply studied them. The thing that I have looked into more deeply that comes from Peru is the Ica stones of Dr. Cabrera, which
Cool.
I discuss in my new book, Extreme Human Antiquity.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about that then? What are the
Well, those are objects that Dr. Cabrera say come from Cretaceous formations in Peru. And they have engravings on them, and the engravings show things like humans with dinosaurs, ancient humans performing advanced medical operations, and things like that. So they're controversial objects. I mean, if they're accepted as Dr. Cabrera originally presented them, he's no longer living, but the objects are still there. They would be over 100 million years old. So that
wow?
was a very interesting case. Now, for me, the problem was he would never reveal exactly where they came from.
Oh, not to
So
anyone.
not to anybody that I know. That so because ideally what you would like is to be able to see them in situ, in place in a Cretaceous formation.
Right.
And that's not because I'm skeptical myself, but it's the audiences that I deal with, they would like to see something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's common sense. I mean, I see people put pictures up with no context all the time in ufology. You know, they got a pinpoint something in the sky. You don't know where it was, what time it was, what was in the background, what's in the foreground. Nothing.
Yeah, it's next to useless.
Yeah, you can't go back and research anything about it. And to see it in situ, like you said, gives everybody a chance to like expand on that knowledge. You know, it gives you a chance to look around it more, expand the archaeology for it, and go looking and do more research toward it. And it proves or disproves itself that way. It's sad. That's sad. Are they living still? Are they?
I was corresponding with his daughter at one point.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the objects are still there. I think there's a museum in his hometown where they're still kept. But I think what's really necessary is to find some of them in the Cretaceous formations that he said they came from.
Right. Yeah, because in archaeology, you can place crustaceans during different periods of time because you know what those animals were, you know? And if it's native to that area or they have evidence of it already existing there or being there, having been there, that's a really good add-in to the veracity of what he's found and showing, you know, to the truth. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, another thing I found really interesting about your book, and kudos for including a whole section on cryptozoology, European wild men, you know, the Yetis of the Himalayas, the Almas of Central Asia, Malaysia and Indonesia, the Bigfoot. You know, how does that all, you know, kind of fit into all of this here? And what are your thoughts on, Bigfoot and so forth?
That's important because what I believe is that if you look at all of the evidence, what you find is not a picture of evolution, but coexistence of hominin types. There were, in the past, humans like us. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of water. I think if you look at the entire archaeological record and not just what you find in today's textbooks, you'll see the pattern is one of coexistence.
Right.
And the coexistence of anatomically modern humans, creatures resembling the hominins or ape men, and apes and monkeys.
Right.
And that coexistence has been going on for a long time. And I believe it's continuing today. And that's the importance of the evidence for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti, the Almas, and creatures like that come from cryptozoology. That even today, you've got anatomically modern humans and apes and monkeys, and you've got these intermediate creatures. So you can trace their lineages back in time, and that coexistence goes on into millions and millions of years in the past. So it's not that the evidence shows that first there were primitive apes and monkeys, then there were these intermediate creatures like Australopithecus and the Neanderthals and the Homo erectus and so on. And then finally the anatomically modern humans.
Right.
Rather, all three of them were always coexisting.
Right.
And
They have DNA evidence of that now. The more they work on DNA, they realize that we have Neanderthal blood, we have rhesus blood, we have Denisovanian blood. These are all these creatures, these beings living at the same time, interacting with one another and breeding back and forth, which is a little weird for humans to think about now, but it's true. It happened.
Yeah, because some are still, because did a lot of research into the whole Bigfoot. I was asked to write a book about this worldwide, and there are good, solid modern-day reports of what look like Neanderthals or Cro-Magnon or wild men. Not necessarily a hairy Bigfoot, but something much, much closer to who we are today, still existing on this planet.
Right.
It's astonishing when you think about that.
Yeah, and there are some researchers that focus on paranormal aspects of these creatures, and that may explain why nobody's been able to capture one.
Yep.
Yeah, a sentient being is sentient. Most people don't realize this, but all of us are sentient. All animals are sentient to a degree, okay? Very intelligent beings. And if they don't want to be caught, they don't get caught. You can't find them. They work very hard at it. There are plenty of animals that have never been discovered that they're starting to discover now because we've moved out into the environment to the point that we're running them down and finding them that way, especially in the oceans. We're coming up with new species all the time, okay, that are already here. And it talks a lot to how did that happen? That evolution didn't do that. Not at all. Suddenly we have this incredible wide range of genetically diverse, life existing above on the surface and below in the water and even on the ground and the trees in the air. And you have to ask yourself, that did not evolve. There's no way. There's no way that could have happened. None, not at all.
I want to pop up with another question. I've only vaguely heard of the Dropa stones. Tom Carson is asking, Michael, do you know of the Dropa circle-shaped stones? Dropa?
They come from China, I believe, and they were. I heard about them at a conference I went to that was organized by Eric von Daniken,
Mm.
And one of the researchers talked about these round stone discs that I believe come from China, but I don't know that much about them other than having heard of them and heard a report about them.
All right.
In your opinion, whose civilization is older, China or India?
Well, I believe, if you look at the Chinese emperor list, they go very far back in time, just like the Egyptian pharaoh list, or in India, they have a list of different the solar and lunar dynasties. Japan, they have the concepts, same thing.
Mhm.
Now, what modern historians tend to say is that the later parts of these lineages, these king lists and emperor lists, are factual, they're true, they're historic. And the earlier parts are mythological, where they tend to go back to the very beginnings of time and trace the origins of these lineages to uh, something extraterrestrial. So I think all of the different civilizations on this planet have existed for a long time. And, my picture of cosmology is probably a little bit different
Okay,
because I think there are millions of universes, not just one, and
right.
they come into existence, go out of existence.
Exactly. But now here's one for you. Have you been to Göbekli Tepe?
I have not, but I have a friend, a researcher in Turkey who is saying that I should come, and I'm investigating the possibility.
Yeah. What's interesting about cultures on this planet is we have the Aboriginal culture in Australia, who has an oral tradition. I read an account where they have, an oral tradition recounting when the Earth actually tilted and the seas changed course and the stars in the sky were different. And of course, the Native American cultures recall that they're directly descended from ETs themselves, and they call themselves, star people. So we,
Yeah.
we see this
Well,
a lot of indigenous cultures that time or civilization goes much farther back.
Yeah.
It makes
Well, look
sense.
at the Swedes, the Norwegians, they got Tor. Did you ever do anything with runes when you were a teenager? Did you ever get to go see any of the Viking runes or anything like that?
uh, yes, but I want to say one thing that related to what you were just talking about. I think we're all extraterrestrials. None of us are
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
you
Agreed.
know. So yeah, but runes, yes, I've seen them. There was, I guess, Barry Fell was a big researcher on runes. The symbols from ancient alphabets in places like the Viking areas and things like that. Actually, a lot of the names of people in Iceland, for example, are related to that. Sigrun
Mhm.
is the name of female name that's used in Iceland. And Sig means victory, and Rune means the symbol of victory,
Right.
or good rune. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really, and they tend to show that the the Americas were visited by people from Europe and other places where these rune alphabets are were used. So it's kind of interesting.
Yep.
The usual explanation is they're fakes. And so far,
Well,
I
we're running out of time, Dolly. We're going to have to wind it up here.
Okay.
But yeah, these amazing books, Michael. I'm so glad you worked so hard along with Richard L. Thompson to put these all together, because I cannot recommend your books enough. That one, Forbidden Archaeology, absolutely changed my life.
If you have kids, put it in your home library and get them to read them. Okay, it's important.
Yeah, and there's links in the show notes for all you guys who are listening, so you can learn more about Michael Cremo's research and all his books as well. But yeah, do you have any last messages, Michael, that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, there's kind of a special offer on my website, mcremo.com, for offering 5 of my books, principal books, for a special low price.
Oh boy.
So
Cool.
people can investigate that.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Well, what a
We'll
wonderful.
put that up on the thing in our comments after the show,
Oh,
so that's there for them to find as well.
yeah, I'm going to put it actually that in the chat here just so people can find it easily as well.
Yeah.
But thanks so much. This has been awesome. I learned a lot and it was just really fascinating stuff. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, it's really,
Back. You need to come back.
I would love to come back.
Good. So after the show, we're going to open our date books and make a date. Okay. We're going to actually put it on paper. You're coming back.
Okay.
Well,
No,
I got to review
books.
Rory.
Yes.
all right. Well, I guess we have to say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. Thank you, Becky and Heidi. Your donations, you guys, mean so much. Namaste. And Christopher, you guys really showed up tonight. Thank you, Bob and Yahira. I think I got that right. Yeah, Yahira. Gizmo. You guys, so amazing. Thank you so much, each and every one of you listening. And we just can't say thank you enough. So thank you so much. And you, yes, Michael, thank you too. Amazing.
Amazing. That's right.
I just adore you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Dolly, I hate to do it, but we got to go.
I know. Thank you, everybody, for coming with us tonight on the Light Gate. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana at the United Public Radio Network at I'm having a hard day, 105.3, and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.4 FM. We are
107.7 and 105.3.
Yeah, 107. I know. Like I said, I'm having a hard day. Oy vey. And we love y'all. We're on Facebook, we're on Roku, we're on Rumble, and we're on YouTube. We are global, and we hope that if you've heard us on the radio, please send us a message on the Lightgate on our channel and let us know that you did hear us. I would be very interested to know who you are, and where you're from. We love you all. Have a good week. Be safe. Good night.
All right.
Hang on.